In Texas, we've got a saying, don't pick a fight you can't finish. So when some fresh-faced HOA president, barely old enough to rent a car, decided to tell me I couldn't drill a well on land that's been in my family for 5 generations, well, that wasn't a mistake. That was political suicide. My name's Clay Maddox. I hold full, legal water rights on this ranch, documents older than her entire HOA, dating back to when my granddad typed them out on a rusted Remington. I know every pipe that runs through this land, every line, every valve. But she thought some fancy bylaws and a gold embossed letterhead could override a century of land use rights. Bad idea, because 24 hours later, her tanks were empty, the HOA office was dead silent, and the sheep started screaming. Drop your location in the comments, because this ain't just a story about a water well. This is revenge. Texas style. No guns, just a wrench, and one very tight valve. The morning sun was already beating down hard when I heard gravel crunching in the driveway. I was elbow deep in our busted old water pump, coaxing another year out of a machine older than my daughter Sage. Since Sarah passed 3 years back, it's just been me and Sage, 16 and tougher than most grown men, trying to keep the Maddox legacy alive. Our land's not just dirt and grass. It's history, family, home. I looked up, wiping my hands on an oil-stained rag, and saw a woman in a business suit picking her way through the dust like she expected landmines. "Mr. Maddox?" she called out, trying to sound important. She was maybe 28, dressed like she was about to present quarterly earnings at a hedge fund, not step onto a ranch. "I'm Brittany Ashford, president of the Meadowbrook Homeowners Association. I need to speak with you about some environmental concerns." She handed me a document like it was the final verdict of a trial. Fancy letterhead, dramatic wording, and a sentence that made my blood pressure spike. Effective immediately, all drilling operations are suspended pending environmental review. I read it twice, then looked her square in the eye. "Ma'am," I said evenly, remembering how Sarah used to tell me to stay calm with clueless people. "This ranch has drilled wells since 1923. Our water rights were signed before most of these subdivisions even existed." Her smile stayed plastered on, but her eyes flickered cold. "The HOA has strict environmental protections, Mr. Maddox," she said. "Unauthorized drilling could affect the local aquifer. We have to act responsibly as a community." She said it like she owned the ground she was standing on. I glanced over at the old brass valve installed by my grandfather back when neighbors sealed deals with handshakes. That valve didn't just run water to my house. It ran water to a lot more places, pipes my family laid decades ago when this was the edge of the frontier. "You seem real confident about your shared resources," I said, tapping the pipe. "Tell me something, Miss Ashford. You know where your community's water really comes from?" She blinked. "I assume it's handled by the city, properly regulated." That's when I knew. She had no idea. This wasn't about aquifers. This was about control. And she had no clue who she was messing with. "You'll need to cease all drilling immediately," Brittany continued, that fake authority creeping back into her voice. "Or the HOA will take legal action. We have attorneys, Mr. Maddox, and we're prepared to use them." She turned and marched off in her ridiculous heels, leaving a trail of arrogance and perfume. Dust swirled behind her SUV as she disappeared down the drive. I looked down at her letter, then at the valve beside me. That brass handled more than she could imagine. Just then, Sage stepped out of the house, hair up in a messy bun, jeans already dusty from feeding the animals. She saw my face. "What happened?" I handed her the paper. She read it, eyes narrowing. "She can't do this, can she?" I smiled, despite the heat building in my chest. She has no idea who she just threatened. That evening, Sage and I climbed up to the attic, a time capsule of family history that smelled like leather, dust, and old ink. My grandfather was a meticulous man. Every box up there was labeled in his careful script. We found the one we needed, water rights and easements, 1920 to 1950. Inside was a yellowed folder, bound with strings soft from age. The document at the bottom was exactly what I remembered, a water supply contract from 1923 signed by my great-grandfather in the county. The Maddox Ranch is authorized to drill, manage, and distribute water within designated zones, in exchange for easement access and infrastructure responsibilities. It was clear as day. We didn't just have the right to our own water. We had the duty to provide it to the surrounding area, and that included the land now occupied by the Meadowbrook community. Brittany didn't realize it yet, but her entire HOA was built on top of pipes my family had installed. "Dad," Sage said, her voice half laughing, half incredulous, "I think she just stepped on the wrong rattlesnake." The kind of silence that lets a man think hard about legacy, not just the land or the rights tied up in old paper, but about the example he's setting for the next generation. At sunrise, I was already outside. The air was cool, still holding on to the night. Sage joined me a few minutes later, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. We stood in the dusty light of dawn, facing the land that had raised 5 generations of Maddoxes, and would, if I had anything to say about it, raise 5 more. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. Let's show her what happens when you try to rob a family that's got more grit than greed. By noon, we had filed a cease and desist with the county clerk's office, citing the original 1923 water infrastructure agreement. We included maps, easement documentation, and notarized statements from neighbors like Earl Patterson. But that was just step 1. Step 2 was telling our story, not the twisted version Brittany fed the internet, but the truth. Sage had already lined up a live stream. Not flashy, not staged. Just me and her, standing in front of the same Val Brittany had no idea controlled her neighborhood's drinking water. "Howdy," I said to the camera. "My name is Clay Maddox, and I'm not an environmental terrorist. I'm a rancher. My family's been taking care of this land and its water since before some of these houses were even dirt lots. We walk people through the paperwork, the history, the pipes." Sage brought up diagrams and deeds while I explained what Brittany had been doing, using fear, misinformation, and the illusion of authority to shake people down. And then we dropped the kicker: screenshots of the development plans, copies of LLC filings, and a timeline that made her intentions plain as daylight. We didn't ask for donations. We didn't ask for followers. We asked for one thing. If you're one of our neighbors and you got questions, come talk to us. Not to TikTok, not to lawyers. To us, like neighbors used to do. By the next day, the tide had turned. It started with a message from a county commissioner thanking us for bringing the water contract to their attention. Then came local reporters, not clickbait chasers, but old-school journalists who smelled a scandal with meat on its bones. And then the real surprise, a knock at the door. Brittany. Gone was the suit. Gone was the cocky smile. She stood there in jeans and a windbreaker, her face drawn like someone who finally realized the rules weren't in her favor anymore. "I came to talk," she said. I looked at her, long and hard. "Funny. I thought you preferred making speeches to cameras." Sage started to say something, but I put a hand on her shoulder. "This part was mine. You try to turn my family's legacy into a liability," I said. "You try to steal from us with a smile on your face and a lie on your lips. You want to talk now that your plan's unraveling." Her voice cracked just a little. I didn't realize the extent of... "No," I cut her off. "You didn't care to find out. But now you're here, so you'll listen." And I laid it out for her. Not a threat, not even anger. Just the plain truth of what we knew, what we had, and what we'd defend. I told her that she had 2 options: retract the video, dissolve the HOA's illegitimate bylaws, and walk away, or watch a community rally around the truth and bring every legal weapon we had to the table? She nodded slowly. I'll make some calls. You do that, I said. And while you're at it, maybe take a walk through these fields sometime. Get your heels dirty. You might learn something. The video was pulled within 24 hours. A statement was issued, full of vague apologies and legal fluff. The HOA was put under review by the county for improper filings. And the development plans? Last I heard, Meadowbrook Development LLC was reassessing its strategy. As for the ranch, well, the pump's still running. The cattle are still fed. And Sage? She's already got a scholarship offer to Texas A&M's AG Law program, with a personal essay titled How to Shut Down a Scam with a Valve Wrench and a Family Name. This wasn't just a fight about water rights. It was a reminder that the land remembers. And so, do the people willing to bleed for it? Because in Texas, we've got a saying, don't start a war on someone else's land unless you're prepared to lose it all. And for the Maddox family, we're still standing, and the water's still flowing.